Got to kind of work on that edit a little bit. We got to get some of those lyrics out of there. It just seems to fade away a little bit too much. Good day, everyone. My name's Colin Livingston. Welcome to Talkin Torque. Been away for quite some time. Little bit of a catch up as to what's been going on and where I've been. My girlfriend had a bit of surgery on a lingering hip issue, so for couple of weeks, almost, I guess better part of 3 weeks, I got to work as a male nurse, kind of taking care of things at home in the morning and scrambling back at night to make sure that everything was taken care of. Kind of tough to take care of yourself when you're not allowed to put any weight on your leg whatsoever. So trying to carry breakfast, a coffee, a bottle of water, anything at all while you're trying to manage crutches was difficult. But we're at the tail end of that. We have been doing a crazy amount of renovations and modifications here at Cantorque. Most notably, we've entered a partnership with a friend of mine. We're developing a machine shop within the building, which has had us running the last, basically month and a half, 2 months, reorganizing the shop, moving a lot of things around, things like our big air compressor, which required a lot of additional plumbing and power. We've got our first CNC machine in the building now and are already looking forward to adding some new pieces here in short order. We need to get some of the first things up and running and get them, producing before we go spend any more money. But really excited to have that to actually be able to turn and create parts within the shop is going to be the next evolution. I've always been proud to once we started producing our components here in Edmonton, that was always a major accomplishment for myself personally, as well as Cantorque. But so while we were doing all that, it meant a lot of very early mornings, a lot of late nights. I've seen 11 and 12 o'clock within the building here many times over the last couple of weeks, which just didn't leave any time to sit down and do this media stuff, the podcasts and radio shows and things like that. But things are slowly returning to normal. Really excited. I've been looking forward to doing this episode for a long time. Got a partner of Cantorque's coming on, George Arabian, who is the founder of Nvision, who's been our digital marketing company here for a little over a year. We do an awful lot with these guys. Instead of giving too much preamble, I'm going to bring in George right now. We'll kind of talk about how we were connected and jump into his story here. George, how you doing, man?
Well, first of all, after that introduction, I'm not sure if I want to do a podcast or jump into a mosh pit.
Well, we can do both. I like that. We've yet to do the mosh pit on the podcast.
So yeah, I'm super excited to be here, Colin. I appreciate the opportunity to, have this conversation. I've been looking forward to it as well, and it's always great to have a talk with you, and just have some open dialogue around what you're doing, what we're doing, and so on. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's not very often we get to do stuff like this. I mean, I tend to default to people that are here in Edmonton. I think I've only done 2 or 3 of these things remotely. Mostly we get some of my local counterparts or business connections, and they'll come into the office and we can just crack open an adult flavored beverage and just have a little chat. But you guys have been really important to us going back to when I became aware, and timing is always a really interesting thing, because I don't know if you know how I got connected to Dean or not.
I don't have the full background. Dean kind of gives you bits and pieces of things that, and has many moving parts to his storytelling. But yeah, I don't quite know the full story. I'd love to hear it.
So you're very aware. I spend a little bit of time in the world of racing, and
Yes.
it was great when you and Christine were able to come out to the Toronto Indy last summer while we were doing our Pinty's thing with Alex. But another one of my counterparts here in town, Lachlan Cross, who is Dean's co-host on, and let me go back half a step. We're obviously talking about Dean Blundell, who is the main attraction here at Crier Media. Obviously, very well known, Toronto-based and Canadian broadcaster. But Dean and Locke do the Dean Blundell show, pretty much every week. And I've known Locke since he was I think he was the drive time guy at the Bear when I first met him, one of Edmonton's big rock stations. Now working over at Cruise FM, and what we try and do is every year when the NASCAR Pinty's race comes through town here, Alex loves doing media. He loves giving his sponsors coverage. So it's turned into my my sideline gig is I've got to be the media coordinator. But we reached out to Lachlan, it was almost 2 years ago now, to say, hey, Alex is going to be in town. Can we come by and do the morning show? We're going to be not too far away at Global TV. And he said, well, I don't think the radio show is for you, but why don't we do the podcast? And, I got to be honest, I didn't even really know what a podcast was. I'd seen them. I saw lots of people talking, and I never paid attention to it. But I got my office really set up. I'd been doing my radio show remotely because it was during the times of COVID, and had it set up so that Alex and I could do, I had two positions, two mics, the two cameras set up, and Alex never made it. He made it back into the building. You can't really see what my structure is, but he sat on that couch there. I did the Dean Blundell show with Locke and just kind of winged it. Dean and I had a number of phone calls, kind of leading up and more importantly afterwards. And once we started talking, man, he brought me right in. And then obviously we got connected with Nvision. You guys are a big a big part of the Dean Blundell show and you personally, and you're welcome to go into how that works. But that's really how it happened.
Amazing. Yeah, the world's a small place, and it's nice to do these things now where you can do them literally anywhere in the world, right? And if you've got a microphone and a camera, away you go. Like press play, press record, and you can have great conversations with people who you would rarely ever cross paths with, right? So just going back really quick to the Toronto Indy, like when I came and met with you, I had never gotten that level of exposure in the world of racing. I mean, I love racing. I love cars, and I've been to numerous races, NASCAR down in the US and whatnot, but never behind the scenes like you gave us exposure to. So not to ramble on, but it blew my mind, the level of organization and sophistication that goes into putting on an event like of that magnitude. It was insane.
Yeah,
Insane.
that was a particularly hectic weekend because
I remember.
as we were, obviously the focus was on getting the race car ready and doing all the race related things, but we were also doing the coverage for Crier,
For sure.
behind the scenes with the IndyCar series and a lot of our friends that we had in attendance. So bouncing, I should go back and look at my stats, but running back and forth from where our paddock was back into the exhibition center, running through the IndyCar world. Yeah, that was crazy. I appreciated your guys' patience because I didn't give you nearly as much time as I would have liked to.
It was cool. There was so much for us to see and take in. So, we spent our time kind of exploring all of these things that the general public doesn't necessarily get access to. So, in that respect, I mean, there was more than enough to keep us preoccupied. And, the moments we did spend together was super fun. I mean, you brought us right into, I don't know what that's called, like your own little private pit area in the back, or where the cars were all set up and your big truck and all the gear. I mean, just to have access to that, and meeting Alex obviously was super cool. Like, you've heard about this guy and his racing, his background. So it was awesome. I still think about it to this day.
Yeah, well, the one good thing that I did for you guys was get you into a race that we actually won. So that
Yeah.
was the fun part for sure. At least, that was my fun part.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's
after a
awesome.
lot of work. Let's go back a little bit. I want to know, yeah, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Like where'd you come from? How did your work life start? And we'll slowly evolve into how did you get into digital marketing, and how did you start the company?
Sure. Yeah. My background is, I come from an immigrant family. So I came to Canada, immigrated from Lebanon when I was 4. There was a war going on there, the Civil War at the time. A lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of death and destruction. Parents had to flee. So kind of made the choice. We had some family here in Toronto, and that was the choice, just to get up and go. Like, let's, rescue ourselves, I guess, if you will. So that's kind of how it all kind of came to be. And getting into Canada, we were here. We moved to a neighborhood down at Vic Park and Shepherd area. If people are familiar with the neighborhood, but anyways, in Toronto. And then we eventually ended up moving up north. Parents got a house up in Markham, and lo and behold, you start getting introduced. This was at the age of 9 or 10, and my parents and family come from a very entrepreneurial background. So my father's an entrepreneur, brother's an entrepreneur, uncles, cousins, are a lot of them are entrepreneurs. So we ended up moving up to a fairly heavily English speaking community. And when we got to Canada, it was, I knew Arabic and Armenian. Those were the 2 primary languages that I spoke. So when we moved to the heavily influenced English speaking community, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I didn't really know how to go about kind of navigating that world of communication. The one thing I did find that bridged that gap was, I used to make, I don't know if you know these little plastic gimp kind of bracelet things that,
Like a friendship bracelet.
yeah, like I used to make these things. I used to go to the store called White Rose, and I'd buy these things for, 5 feet of it for like $1. My dad would give me allowance. I'd go buy these things, make these bracelets, and I'd go peddle them in the playground. So I make these
Okay.
things for 10 cents at like 9, 10 years old, and I'm selling these things for $1 or 2. And then we go to the local hasty market, and I'd buy my buddies candy, and we started forging these relationships. But what that really taught me was the power of entrepreneurship, and the ability to generate, sales. Unbeknownst to me, obviously, at that point in time, but I think that set the foundation. So as I, got older, one of the things I really truly loved in high school was communication technology. So we used to do a lot of video creation and editing, and I was a very early adopter in the world of web. I was fortunate that my parents bought me a computer. It was a Packard Bell machine. I'll never forget. And back in the day, there was no graphical interface. A lot of it was DOS commands, lines, and whatnot. So I started learning how to put all that together, and then eventually I just started learning HTML and whatnot. So my very first gig, I would say, and so just taking a step back, I also started a company to build and sell computers back when I was, I don't know, 14 or 15. So I was the guy in the community um, that you would go to buy a computer back when computers were this new kind of amazing tool that everybody needed to have one in their household. One day I was down at a local hockey shop in on Avenue Road, and the owner there said, "Hey, I need this thing called the internet. I need an internet." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, you need an internet? I don't understand." He's like, "The thing you go to on this computer, and there's a page." And we're talking like 1992, 93. I'm like, "Do you mean like a web thing, like a website?" And he's like, "Yeah, I need one." I'm like, "Oh, I can do that for you. Why not?" So, not having ever built one, I probably invested 400 to 500 hours into figuring this thing out, writing HTML, doing graphic design work, whatnot. And one thing led to another, and he cut me a check for $400 now, which works out to like 75 cents an hour. But it taught me, it was probably the most important lesson I learned, which was like, oh, this is something I'm really gravitating to. Go on a couple more years. I was at York University, and jumped around in a bunch of different um, you know uh, degrees that I wanted to take part in. Couldn't really find my niche, but then one of my profs suggested I take marketing and communications. So I jumped on and did some marketing and communications, and I really loved it. It was really up my alley. And then so where Envision started to kind of come to life, going back 20 years now, is I took what I learned on the marketing communication side and my passion for design and development, and I kind of squashed them all together and started this agency as my next kind of experiment or venture. And here we are 20 years later, So
That's
that's
awesome.
yeah.
So going back, I mean, I hear a lot of similarities in how you evolved to how I started, very, very different. I mean, I'm not an immigrant. I'm, born and raised here, so I didn't have the struggles of having to learn new languages. But do you ever, either consciously or subconsciously, fall back on the lessons, or remember the lessons you learned as a bracelet manufacturer, or any of your earlier, hustles?
Yeah, I mean, I did so many of them throughout the years as a young kid, just trying to figure out my path in life. And I think when you're, 8, 9, 10 year old, you're just, you're doing it for, shits and giggles, or just to make friends, or whatever the objective is, without really knowing the lessons that it's teaching you. And as I sit here today and I think back to those moments, they were integral for how I shaped who I am, how they shaped who I am. Experiences, I truly do believe, kind of could alter the entire course of your life. And I was just fortunate that I had the motivation. I needed to make friends. I was the one kid in the schoolyard that couldn't communicate. So how best to communicate it? Commerce was my was kind of the catalyst for that for me. So I think about that all the time. I think about it, and I'm grateful that the course of my life kind of started there, because it's certainly taught me how to, you got to, this as a business owner, you got to work hard and you got to grind. And there's a lot of complex decisions that need to be made. I mean, you were talking in your opening about, putting new equipment in and manufacturing your own gear, right? I mean, that takes courage and foresight. And so there's a lot of moving pieces that I think lessons from the past you always fall back on.
Whether conscious or subconscious,
For
like,
sure.
for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, my origin, my first money making operation was a buddy and I, when we were kids. I mean, we were 10 years old, maybe 12 years old, but I remember a lot younger. We would hop the fence at the local golf course, and we'd go through the water hazards fishing golf balls out. And we had to be careful because you weren't allowed to be on the golf course.
Right.
But we would also go like later in the day, later at night, when nobody would see us. Now, we didn't know what the hell was in these water traps. We didn't know, um, if there were any hazards. We didn't know if that, like, we would go in, kind of barefoot, kind of, gear down to our underwear, and we would fish through. And if we felt a ball, we would kind of step on it. We just keep going until we had as many as we could carry. And then we'd end up, we'd sell them back to the golfers, pocket our cash, and then we would blow it, later on that day. And it was actually deciding to keep the money that we made over a weekend that I used to buy my first set of golf clubs. Like, up until that point, I had zero to show for it, but we were probably making, I don't know, at the very least, we were making, 25, $30 a day. And some days we'd make a lot more than that, and we would just waste it, because we were
Sure.
stupid kids.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we did this. Like I said, I'd go to the Hasty Market and buy candy or whatever, chips, or I'd go to the comic book store and blow it all on comic books because I loved comic books. But I mean, you take a great sense of pride knowing that you worked to attain that thing.
Yeah.
You put effort into it. It wasn't just given to you. So I think those are some of the lessons that I still take away. Is like, if you want something, you got to put the work in, whether it's going into water traps or whether it's, trying to break the ice by making bracelets, which was like, I mean, I wouldn't do today, but
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, if I could find an industry with a 10 times markup,
yeah,
I wouldn't say no to it. That sounds pretty appealing, I gotta say.
yeah, I do encourage my kids. I mean, I have four of them, so I'm like, I'm trying to motivate them now as they grow up to be like, here, start considering this path of kind of doing your thing, and you're gonna fail. you're gonna hit roadblocks, but if you think things through logically, there's usually an answer, and a lesson to be learned if and when you do fail, because it is going to happen.
Do they ever come to you when they hit the roadblock, or do they tend to take it themselves?
Yeah, it's interesting. They do approach me with my kids are interesting in that they've seen, obviously myself as an entrepreneur kind of setting my own path and my own ways. So they have their own ideas and suggestions on things that they want to explore. It's the follow through that I'm really trying to teach them. Like, this isn't something that dad's going to do for you. Like, if you want to do it, you do it. I'll support you and I'll give you thoughts and ideas and even fund you if I need to. But the moment I fund you, I'm a partner in this venture of
Yeah.
yours. It's this.
We can teach you about
Yeah,
return on investment.
you got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's my daughter's the same way. She's 21, and for years has had a little, I shouldn't call it a little business, but the only thing I know is a home-based business where she makes little hair scrunchies and bandanas and just, little apparel, and has actually sold her products worldwide. I talk to her, yeah, I talk to her all the time, but we were talking about that not too long ago. And yeah, I think she's spanned 4 continents now. I don't know how many countries, but um, it's a growing concern. But I try and talk to her like a business owner and say, well, what kind of returns are you making? Like, what are your input costs? Because if you don't know what a thing costs you, how do you know how to sell it?
Right.
And I know she's figured it out, but she will not talk to me about the business. Like, if she's got an issue or if she's got a challenge, we'll talk about her car. We'll talk about any of the things that are out of her capacity. But yeah, she takes it all on herself.
Well, I'd be confident talking to you about my car. That's somewhat.
I make no secret of the fact, and I say this many, many times a week. I am not a car guy. I am
Not
a
at all.
racing guy.
Okay.
No, people talk about specs and they know every name of every component, and they know that car's got a Woodgy Wudge transmission and some kind of Johnson rods. I don't know anything about. I shouldn't say I don't know anything, but relative to my position in racing, I don't know anything. Like,
That's
um
a that's I'm surprised to hear that, because I know how passionate you are about racing, and I just thought it came with the territory. But maybe it doesn't have to.
nope.
So
Yeah, even as a racer, I mean, I still get in and do my go-kart stuff. I know a little bit of how I like a cart to feel, and I know how to do the setup for that. But if my cart doesn't feel the right way, I'm asking a lot of questions as to, like, do I need to go stiffer with the axle? Do I need to go wider in the rear end? Do I need this, that? Like, 'cause I'm not a mechanical guy like that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, when we get to the racetrack, I even had customers here yesterday. We did a shop tour. I've got one of our show cars, a two-seat former Pinty's car, and the guys are asking me, like, "What does that thing got for an engine?" I'm like, "Steel?" Like, I
cylinders.
know I know it's a steel engine. Like, most
Yeah,
of the new Pinty's cars have, they're aluminum, not aluminum blocks, but they're aluminum heads, aluminum everything, so they're a lot lighter weight. I know this is an all steel. That's about as far as I go. I just don't, and honestly, I don't care, because this is the race car is just a tool. I don't
right.
need to know. But most of my counterparts, the spotters that I work with, when we're not spotting, they're back in the pits and they're pulling wrenches and they're helping with setup, and I just stay the hell out of the way. I don't know. I mean, if we're thrashing, yeah, I know how to operate wrenches. I'm obviously, I've got some mechanical aptitude, but as far as, trying to do that, that's just not me.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
So obviously all these things have led to the computer construction, the coding, and going back, you started with DOS, I started with basic,
Yeah.
like when I was in elementary school. I think we're about the same age, give or take.
Yeah.
But how did I mean, you can't put it into a couple of words, but let's just talk about how you ended up founding Envision. And was it something that you just chose to do and see what it was? Was it the evolution of hardware and website development that had started before that, or was it a response to a particular need that needed to be solved?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think ultimately what you like anybody, they want to get into doing something that they truly love and enjoy. And having built that very first website for that hockey shop down on Avenue Road, I think what it taught me was like this is really cool. This is a medium where anybody on the planet who has a computer at the time, dial up, could actually get insights and figure out what this small little shop on Avenue Road now has global exposure. And I think as I went through, building the second site and the third site, I really started to appreciate the power of this communication tool. And so, that prompted me to say, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's not building hardware, which was at that point I was probably 4 or 5 years in. From my early teens to my late teens, I was building these things. It kind of lost the allure, if you will. Things were getting very commoditized. Companies like Dell and Apple and HP,
Gateway and
Gateway,
all
yeah,
the
Gateway,
build to order guys.
yeah, built to order, right? So it's like you don't need me, and this is not something I want to do. And the margins on these products were going from like, I'd sell a computer, I'd make $1,000, and it got to a point where it was like I couldn't even clear $100 in margin because I had to bring my prices down to compete with the big players. So but I started, on the side, I was building these sites, and that was really interesting to me. And it was, I wouldn't say it was immensely profitable at that point in time, but certainly as it evolved and we started getting more sophisticated with tools that we were building, bringing in our first employee, our second employee, our 10th, 20th, 30th employee. I mean, we're getting, it's never gotten dull for me, which is one thing I just love about our industry because it's always evolving and bringing on new challenges. Every client is unique. They have their unique requirements, they have their unique goals. So I get firsthand exposure truly to a lot of businesses and how they operate because the conversations we're having aren't so much like, hey, what do I do with this graphic? What color should I make this button? It's more so, hey, this is my business and these are my overarching objectives this year for my business. How do we tie this digital thing to align with the business, and how do we structure it so this thing can help me facilitate and align with my goals? And I love that because it really allows me to have like conversations with you, conversations with many other business owners, because I'm hearing it from them and I'm like, huh, unbeknownst to you, business owner, you just gave me a great bit of advice. I'm gonna go do that for myself, and it's like this osmosis of just being around other decision makers and business owners. So I think I get real gratification from being part of those dialogues.
Yeah, well, obviously, we were introduced through Dean,
Yeah.
and but what was super cool to me was that once I started talking to Dean, he said, "Look, here's what I think you need to do. You need to talk to my friend George over here. So let me schedule a phone call, or I can't remember how that whole thing started. You and I had a number of conversations because we were in a position. I mean, the guys we worked with before Nvision, love them to pieces. Company called Concept. I still talk to the guy all the time, but we had kind of grown past what they were doing, and because we were moving more into the media side of things with the podcast and doing the stuff with Dean, it just made more sense to have everything under one roof. It wasn't that anyone had done anything wrong, but our website had really struggled and things like that. So you and I had a number of conversations, and then all of a sudden, because I was unfamiliar with how the process worked, you said employee 20 and employee 30. Let me throw up the website here really quick, because all of a sudden it's like, well, now I for this, you're going to be talking to this person, and this is you're going to be talking to that person. I'm just trying to find
Right there.
the
Yeah. Scroll down if you're looking
is
for
it
the
on?
deep.
Oh yeah, there we go. And then all of a sudden it's like, we're talking to Sylvia, we're talking to Bowie, we're talking to Nicole, we're talking to Christine, we're talking to Philip, we're talking to Mark. It's like, wow, they have like specialists for everything. Then there's this guy here, but yeah, very, very impressed with how I'm not a big structure person, even as we've talked about doing this show today. It was like, let's just start with a couple bullet points and then we'll kind of let it fly. But when it comes to dealing with you guys, you were great about listening to what our requirement was, but there's still a process that happens on your end. And, I mean, every single benchmark and every single timeline has been met every single time with you guys. It's there's definitely a couple of things that I need to learn from your side of things.
Yeah, and we certainly take great pride. Obviously, part of our part of our objective here is to help change the trajectory of your business. And that's not, oftentimes the thoroughness of a consultative approach gets dismissed by immediately starting to execute tactically, meaning like, hey, let's just go about thumbs up, I guess. Let's go
That's
with the
have you seen that before?
yeah, I wonder if it'll work. I've done this many
Yeah,
times.
I
There it
actually
is. So I love that one, but
that's awesome.
yeah, tactically, oftentimes when clients approach us, is like, "Hey, we want a new design." That's usually where most consumers start because
Yeah.
they're just not aware of the process, right? I don't like the look of my site, or if it looks dated. It's like, okay, what else is dated? Is the tech dated? Probably. Is the copy dated? Does it really speak to who you are? I'm gonna keep my hands down
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Does the copy speak to who you are? Does it speak to the brand and the voice? And then oftentimes what is rarely ever discussed, and it's an oversight, not to anybody's fault, but there's this tendency to forget about who you're speaking to. Like, who are the audiences you're trying to actually communicate with? And often business owners talk very peer to peer as opposed to peer to consumer. So they're using vernacular and nomenclature narratives that somebody in their industry may understand, but if you're trying to attract somebody else, you have to speak their language. So you have to understand who those audiences are. So the definition of those personas becomes integral. So we, as you know, I mean, we rebuilt your website, and to this day, I literally probably show it off once every week to a new prospect. I'm like, you want to see a great site? Check out Cantorks. And I literally do that every week. And the reason I do that is because we put a lot of consultative thought into how to structure things for navigational purposes, the visuals, the imagery, the copy. Like, there's so much that goes into producing a quality product. And that is what's going to help change trajectories of businesses. It's not, let's just have an aesthetic uplift, right?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to turn this into a Cantor commercial, but I vividly remember going through the process with Philip and with Mark, and we went through like so many iterations of things like the lines, which are kind of symbolic of racing, and every little graphic has the same kind of cutaway on it.
Yep.
We've got the carbon fiber background because it kind of ties racing into what we do. Every like, I mean, while it might see a lot of this is probably overlooked and not understood, but on our page specifically, there's so many little subtle things like the hex bolt
Yep.
buttons, and again, all the graphic windows have the same cutaway, all the links. I mean, it was really cool, and the for me the best part was that it wasn't this or that. It wasn't, here's what we've come up with. And I I'll do a slight deviation. A previous company with whom we worked told us categorically, you have to get rid of the red on your website. And I like, what do you mean? You can't have red on a website because red deters people from clicking, and I'm like, have you ever been to my shop? Have you ever seen our tools? Have you ever do you have any idea what
Ha- Have you
like
ever drank Coca-Cola?
it's and like, but the steadfast, absolutely diametrically opposed. Like, you've got to get rid of the red. Like, we can maybe have highlights in your logo, but that's it. We can't have it like when I was dealing with the web people, because there's so many divisions of Nvision that we deal with. We've got social marketing people, we've got the website, we've got the video, we've got there's people in the background that are trying to resurrect our Facebook page. We've got divisions for everything, and it's really, really cool. But it was never, this is the way it's going to be. Our studies say that this is what we have. Like, we get a lot of input, we get a lot of industrial insight, but at the end of the day, I was able to make the decision, and I would get pitched 3 or 4 different versions. And even if it wasn't number 1 or number 2, it's like, I kind of like this from 1 and I kind of like this from 2. Can we do that? Oh yeah, no problem. Like, the one of my favorite things is when people tell me, well, I'm not a salesman. Like, what do you mean you're not a salesman? And they say, well, I'm not really good at convincing people to get things that they don't need or they don't want. Like, if that's really what you think a salesman is, then we need to start with that first, because a salesman is not someone who just gets an order. That's an order taker. Salesman is someone who listens to what a customer's problem is and then offers a solution. That's how sales works. And that was, I go back to lessons my father-in-law taught me, going back 30 plus years, who, he said, nothing in this world happens until a salesman gets an order. And he's 100% correct. But that's, you're the salesman, you're the entry point, and then you're also the safety net. You're the guy that, let me find out what your scope is, and then I'm going to talk to my people. But if there's anything kind of deviating from the path, you're always available there, which was really cool. But yeah, we're very extremely happy with how things turned out.
Yeah, and so are we, and we're grateful for the opportunity, of course. And we work best with customers. I mean, we start with a vendor kind of relationship, but then we truly want to become a partner with our clients, because it really starts to forge better outcomes for them. Understanding your business, understanding where you're taking things, understanding the nuances of your day-to-day operations allows us to formulate a better ongoing strategy for you, right? It's not just like tactical, we need to write another blog, or tactical, let's add this product to this page. Like, those are relevant, but they're not the only thing that's relevant. It's how does all that align with your underlying objective? Like, what is the game plan for the business? And then how do we tap into this amazing thing called the web, and this digital presence, to really optimize that for you and
Yeah.
amplify your voice and your messaging. So
Now, we've got a selection of your services, but let's kind of put into a nutshell, what is Nvision, and what exactly do you guys do?
yeah, so we consider ourselves a full service hybrid agency. And why we use the word hybrid is intentional. Lot of There's a lot of organizations out there that are very much specialists in one area. Like, there'll be an SEO company or a web design company or paid digital advertising company. Because of our approach, and because we start at very much consultative first, our intentions are to understand what the business is trying to achieve and the why of that business. So we continuously ask our prospects, is like, why are you doing that? Why do you think you need that thing? Why do you think that SEO or social media or user experience or whatever the case may be is integral for you? So we are a full service hybrid agency, in that we start with a consultative approach, and then we do the execution after we define the objectives. So we're a team of 30 plus now. Been around. We just celebrated our 20th year in business. So this is something, and you alluded to it earlier. We have experts in every discipline. So if something was to present itself as an opportunity for you, we don't want to shy away from presenting that, to say, hey, there's a great opportunity. You're not doing this channel of marketing right now, but we're seeing that there's an influx, or your competitors are starting to appear in these different areas. Here's the research we've done. Here's why we can justify it. Here's kind of a high level ROI of what we anticipate this investment will get in return for you. And we want to continually have that discussion. Otherwise, it gets boring, man. I don't want to just build a website and be like, here's a graphical, here's a good looking website. See ya. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the neat things is I have a monthly follow up with the social media person, Christine. So we'll, what's if we have a half hour scheduled once a month, we end up talking for about 45 minutes generally. And I think we spend about 15 of those minutes talking about the website and what it's doing. And the rest of it is talking about life and talking about golf and talking about all these other things that go on and things that piss me off and things that I find stupid and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's a great company to deal with. Now, I'm gonna read this the way I wrote it because I think it's I think it's pretty special. You first of all, you mentioned SEO, and that's one of the banes of my existence are these SEO companies because I get, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 20 emails per week asking, hey, we can't find you on, Google. We can't find you on this one, that one, and the other one. But if you let us do our SEO, then you're going to rank higher. And every time I get one of those, first of all, it's from a generic, anonymous person, but it's like, how did you find me in the first place?
Good question.
You don't know me. We've never spoken, and yet somehow you know how to send me an email. So you can't tell me that my SEO isn't working. And the more of those I get, the more I know it's working. But you guys are in an oversaturated cesspool of competitors. There is no shortage of companies that are willing to take money to build websites, especially with keyword, campaigns, SEO campaigns, video production, et cetera, et cetera. What, in your words, what really separates you from the rest of the cesspool?
I think it's our approach. I mean, I would say the people here, obviously, um, we have a pretty rigorous process of bringing in the right people for our organization. But I mean, we've been in this 20 years. So we're not these new kids on the block. I mean, literally, Colin, I get emails every week to say, "Hey, we can help you with your SEO." I'm like, do you even know what I do?" Like, so you're not paying attention. You're not looking at the details. You're not identifying the nuances. I get the silliest emails every week of things that I'm like, that's literally written on our website. Like, did you not take the time? The difference is when you're mature as an organization and you understand not only the business side of it, but the tactical execution side of it as well. If you can marry those two things together, you're gonna have very successful outcomes for your clients. So for us, it's not just output. Like I think a lot of people get fixated on what the output is. The output is the website. The output is a social post. The output is a new blog. Well, great. What are the outcomes, and how do these things align with that outcome? And that's where we differ. Is like we start with identifying what outcomes our client needs.
Yeah.
It's not I can get you ranked higher. Anybody can get anybody ranked higher in SEO, but if it's not qualified, if all of it's going to do is have more people knock on your door saying, "Hey, I can do better SEO than that guy who just did SEO for you." Well, I'm trying to grow my business. I don't need more SEO people. Do you guys even know what I do and where
Yeah.
my business is going? So that is the big differentiator is we ask a lot of questions and we really get ingrained with our client, like understanding the true nature of their business. You mentioned, you have these conversations, the conversations you're having with Christine and the rest of our team where it's 15 minutes of like strategic dialogue and the rest is more, story sharing. Believe it or not, having that confidence and that comfort to have that story sharing, our folks are educated enough and trained enough to say, what are the nuances of what he's saying? So here's an example I'll give you. A lot of organizations have analytical data. There's no shortage of Google data these days. You can go to your analytics, see all your quantifiable numbers. Some organizations will layer that with qualifiable analytics, like looking at user behavior, screen recordings, heat mapping, that sort of thing. So you marry those two together, it really starts to solidify the direction you should take with your marketing. The one bucket that people fail to really dive into is what I like to call as observational analytics, is listening. It's just listen to what Colin or your customer is saying to you and pick up on the nuances of the sorts of things. I'm really pissed off at company X who's just launched this product and it's crap. Okay, if he thinks it's crap, do you have a product? Do you have that product in your portfolio? You do? Okay. So if that's crap and they've just launched it, something should trigger us to say, he also has this product. His is better, more superior. How do we go about marketing
Yeah.
this thing for him? So it's that observational analytical side that oftentimes gets dismissed because it's just like, we're just having a half an hour of fun chat. But if you sit there and truly observe the words that are coming out of your client's mouth, you're going to take away one or two things that they're passionate about,
Yeah.
that are important to them, right?
Now, one of the fun things is because I have fairly regular chats with the behind the scenes staff.
Yep.
I did a couple of quick polls, and we'll see if your answers kind of match what their thoughts are. So I asked them, because I know you from a distance, said, would you consider George fairly hands on or hands off? What do you think like within Nvision, what do you think the answers were there?
Oh boy, I would think that they would say I'm hands on and they want me to be hands off. I think sometimes I'm my worst enemy. I'm so passionate about what we do, and I'm kind of intervening here and there, but it's not. I trust my staff wholeheartedly. Like, they are brilliant people that I work with, and I'm fortunate to be surrounded by them. I just kind of sometimes feel left out, and I'm like, I want to be part of that, just like that, strategy, or give my insights on how I would approach it. So I would assume they would say I'm hands on, but they prefer for me to be a little more.
So the combination, the hybrid answer that I got, George, very hands-on in the sense that there's no job too small and is not afraid to roll up his sleeves. However, sometimes George is a little bit too hands-on, which can lead to team-wide panic and confusion. But he's really good at taking feedback when this happens.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly what I said. Like,
Yeah.
and it's so I'm working on those skills to kind of let
But it's
go of
hard.
some.
This is not a corporate structure for you. This is your thing. Like, and I understand that very well. Like, there's not one thing in this building I have not touched, and I'm talking about every ceiling tile, every millimeter of wall. I've painted, I've applied something, I've repaired something, I've changed light fixtures, I've mopped like every millimeter of floor I've touched with a mop at some point or another. I'm like, this isn't just it's I don't just own it. Like, this is what I do. Like, I understand that very well.
Totally, yeah, and I think it's hard for us in our positions to not want to be part of, like my staff will say regularly, like, I know you'll go clean the toilets if you have to. I'm like, yeah, of course I will. Like, I don't put myself above anybody here. I
Yeah.
want to be part of the crew, but I also know that I am disruptive to certain things, and I know it causes sometimes panic because George asked for something when it was just like in passing. Hey, when you get around to it, it's like, can you do this thing for me? And everything, the world comes to a halt here sometimes, and it's like everyone's working on that thing for me, and I'm like, that's not what I meant. That's not
Yeah.
what I meant. Like, so, but yeah, I'm just passionate about it. I mean, I love what we do, but yeah, what they are dead on in their observations.
How do you think they describe you as a person away from the office?
I think I like to think I have a lot of approachability, and I've earned their respect, and they've earned mine, and I like to think I'm fun, but I also know that I'm a lot older than most of the people here. Um, but that shouldn't prevent them from thinking that I could be a fun guy.
Yeah.
But I rock out with my guitars here and play loud music in the office. It's kind of my thing. I don't know how they would describe it. I hope they would think that I'd they'd enjoy being in my presence.
Let's combine a couple answers here. I see a lot of George is a good time, loves to hang out, ensures that everyone feels comfortable. George likes to make everyone feel included. Something about white wine and ice.
Yep. Yep. Always have a little bit of
Um,
ice in the white wine. I just like to
you
keep it cool. I think it gets warm quick.
can put
So
it in a thermal cup.
that'd be weird in a restaurant to be like, can I get a thermal cup of
Well,
wine?
you didn't specify. I'm still picturing the fun time in the office with all the loud music.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Now we've talked a bit about music over the time, but let's share. Obviously you have a bit of an affinity for electric guitars.
I do. I
Do you
do.
play?
I do. I
And
do.
who are your favorites?
I don't really like it. For me, it's all about the mood that I'm in. So I will go from like Hendrix to Stevie Ray Vaughan to I'll go all the way to like Jim Root and Mick Thompson from Slipknot. Like I have a wide range of guitar. A big fan of guitar players. Like right now, for whatever reason, I'm in this massive Stevie Ray Vaughan kick. So every day for the last 2 weeks, I've just been blasting Stevie. And
Okay.
I just cannot get enough of how beautiful his, patterns are and how effortless he makes it sound. So I've got a wide range, but I've also got a little Jimi Hendrix shrine in my home, like that in the bar that I built in my basement there's a panel that I built and it's Jimmy and it's lit up and it's very psychedelic if I want it to be with LED lights. And so I just love Jimmy. He takes me to a whole other world. But Gary Clark Jr.,
Mm.
like there's so many wonderful guitar
Where
players.
does just because this is always a favorite conversation between a buddy of mine and myself, where does George Lynch fall in your?
Yeah, he's top 10 for sure
Okay.
of all time. I mean, the guy he's brilliant.
Have
Brilliant.
you ever played one of his guitars or like a George Lynch style guitar with the widespread fret, like the huge frets and the?
No, I got the smaller hand. I mean, I've got 30 guitars. So I've got a pretty good collection of them, but I've kind of in the last 2 years because I started getting into some Fenders that I bought. That's kind of been my go-to. I've got my Les Pauls and all kinds of other goodies, Ibanez's and SGs from Gibson, but I really gravitate towards my Fenders. I don't know. I just the feel of them now is as I get older. Maybe it's arthritis. Who knows? But they just feel great.
Yeah, awesome. This is one of my favorite questions to ask. I can ask it of anyone at any time, but what is something about you that you hear on a regular basis? Like, what is one misconception of that you hear? Like your best intention, but it gets taken the wrong way, or you constantly have to re-explain yourself that's not so, like a misconception about George.
A misconception about George. It's a great question, man. I haven't really thought about it. Maybe I have to dial in a little bit and try to figure that out. Hmm. Misconception about George.
Okay, so I'll open it up. So it can either be a misconception about you, a misconception about what it's like to be a business owner, a misconception about what it's like to be in, the digital marketing world.
Um. Yeah. I mean, okay. So I'll take the third question, the digital marketing world. The biggest misconception is that the moment you start marketing, the floodgates open and you become an overnight success story. And the one thing I really tell people, you have to have tolerance and patience when it comes to marketing, because unless you are ready to invest tens of millions of dollars into really getting visibility, it's really challenging. I mean, everybody hears about the influencer who got, 90 million views on this video or whatever. And it's like those are so rare. And what was the impact of that? Like what was the impact of that to their life, to their bottom line, to their business? Was it, so I think the misconception is that marketing, by starting marketing, you're going to be an immediate success. And that is far from the truth.
Yeah, which is, to tie it into our world of racing. People think that sponsorship means putting a sticker on a race car and then, your phone starts ringing.
Right.
That's the advertising part of it is secondary. It's what you do with that advertising. It's the fact that you have access to a race team or a race driver, or there was a B2B connection. But I kind of equate it in your situation, our situation, to a gym membership.
Yeah. Right.
Buying the gym membership doesn't make you healthy. It
Right.
just gives you access to the gym. You got to use it, and you got to put the time in, and you got to sweat and burn and hurt and fail and, correct and all those things. It's not a one-to-one that, you start doing, you start investing in a thing and all of a sudden it pays you an immediate dividend.
Yeah, I think as business owners, you gotta keep grounded and humble. I've been doing this 20 years, and the rug can get swept from under your feet in a second if you don't, continue down the path of realizing that you've gotten here because you've put in certain puzzle pieces in place.
Yep.
You've had morals and ethics and how you've grown the business. Obviously, we have our ups and downs. I mean, this is a roller coaster, not a merry-go-round, in my opinion. But I mean, you got to stay humble. You got to stay hungry. You got to be a good human being. I always preach that at our agency. It's like the human first approach. It's the people here that have made the success, not just George.
Right.
Like it's all of us, like collectively.
No, wholeheartedly agree. Got one more comment that fired in here. What is with the 5-year-old Sill sweater?
5-year-old. Oh, so this sweater that I've got on.
Okay.
This was our 15-year anniversary kind of logo that we did
Yeah.
5.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I wear, like, I'm a simpleton. I'm not a big fashion guy, although my parents and my brother have clothing stores. I've always been jeans and a t-shirt and a sweater. That's kind of my go-to.
Love it.
And so my sweater, who I outwore it, and I was at the office one day, and mine was kind of like falling apart. It had holes in the sleeves. I mean, I still love it, but I saw this one that was sitting here, and then I came back the next day. He was still sitting here, and then I came back the next week, and the sweater was still sitting here. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take that one and put it on, unbeknownst to me whose it was, because it had been sitting here. So it ended up being Sylvia's. So I've been wearing this thing for probably the better part of a year now, without her knowing. But we have these all labeled, like we had our names or our nicknames kind of like stitched into them.
Yeah.
So the other day, I think it was cold out, so I put the hoodie up, and they're like, "Is that Sylvia's sweater?" I'm like, "Oh no," because it's under the hood. You can't actually see it
Right.
until you flip the hood.
Yeah.
So they caught me with it on, and it's been now I got to get new sweaters for all of us, I guess.
Well, once you hit 20,
Well, we got our new 20-year logo, so that's kind of in the works. So we're getting new sweaters, and I will have a brand new one with my name on it.
very good. I can say, I think I've got my 20, like
Yeah,
our 20th was year 2000. And I love this 20 logo because we actually wrote I can't quite point the right way reverse, but we actually turned our logo into a 20.
awesome.
My graphic designer Leslie did a great job with that, and I still love wearing it. We don't use it really anymore, although I catch myself, finding it in a brochure or something like that. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
It's I never thought, when I started the business, the only thing I ever wanted to do was make sure we didn't lose our home, and my son, who was the only kid I had at the time, didn't go hungry. That was my whole objective.
yep. Same
So
here. Yeah, I mean,
getting to 20 was it felt pretty real.
it's amazing. It's such a great point of pride, and again, you're grounded and you stay humble, and you're like, okay, that's amazing because we all hear the stats about businesses failing in the first few years, startups having struggle and whatever, and to be around 20 years is a real sense of pride for me, and it should be for you as well, for sure.
Every year is a new sense of pride because you were talking about staying hungry and staying motivated. I'm a firm believer. I mean, the last bunch of years, I'm not going to lie, have been very challenging for us, with COVID and with very, very rapidly changing business climate. But even in the best of times, I'm a absolute believer that we're no more than 3 bad decisions away from being bankrupt. Like, we're
For
no
sure.
more than 3 wrong decisions away from being out of business.
For sure.
It can
Yeah.
happen that quickly. And if you don't think it can, take a look at the biggest of the big that have folded in the States and around the world. So
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to keep pushing forward, really thinking things through, not being impulsive on all decisions, like take some time to think about it.
yeah, absolutely. You got anything else you want to throw at us, George? Anything else we need to know about Nvision? Oh, pardon me. I knew I had one more question and I absolutely forgot. We need to talk about
Right.
what is the story behind the upside down I in your company logo?
Yeah. So our logo used to be all lowercase. And the story behind the uppercase writing of the logo. So when it was in lowercase, the N and the I combined are actually a mathematical equation for n factorial. what n factorial actually stands, imply the calculation or the rationale, I guess the model of n factorial, as I should put it, is infinite possibilities, is what it means. So in math, when you use the n factorial equation, it's infinite. So the n and the I together are that symbol. So we took it and we added the word vision, and plus the upside down I is actually an exclamation mark. It's like, yes, so that's kind of it. And then the uppercase spelling of it now no longer implies n factorial, but the story behind the uppercase was at our 15-year anniversary, we decided to change it as a symbolism of us growing up. So we matured into lowercase to more mature. So that's the kind of story behind it.
If that's the way that things need to go, I need to use a lot bigger font. The further we go, everything just seems to get bigger. Not
Well,
necessarily
I think I'm gonna go back to the lowercase because I still want to feel young at heart. So, but anyways, that's kind of the story behind the exclamation and how we use the typeset.
You're in great company with 7-Eleven, who has the lowercase n with the rest of their uppercase letters.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. George, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was a great time, great guest. And hopefully in a couple of my trips through Toronto, hopefully we can get together here.
Amazing, Colin. Thank you so much for having me today. This was a blast. And yeah, definitely look forward to seeing you, whether it's on the indie circuit or having a glass of wine with ice in it.
I'll try to learn. I'll try to learn. See, my thing is I've never had a glass of wine long enough that I had to worry about it warming up.
Good point. Yeah. Awesome, man.
Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk soon.
Man. You got it. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Ah, what a great dude. Great company. Again, these are not words that we throw around really loosely. I mean, I'm really happy that we can, showcase some of our genuine suppliers, partners, friends. I mean, Nvision has just been unbelievably helpful to us. There we go. We just crossed over an hour. That was a lot of fun. And we'll be back hopefully next week with another great guest here.